Hiya, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts and I hope you're doing okay. Now this is another spin-off from the video I did a few weeks ago about silicone inlay sheets, where I used embossing sheets for fondant to make some inlay sheets. The idea is that you can put texture into your resin. A lot of people asked me if you could use card making embossing sheets for it, and I don't have any, so I didn't know. But I had some really lovely subscribers send me some to try. You know who you are, so thank you so much. So I'm going to try to use the card embossing sheet inlay plastic things that you put the paper in between to create pattern on paper. I'm going to try and use those and see how they come out. And I've also got some die cutting things that somebody said you could use. Paula, you said you could use them and she insisted. So I thought I'd give them a try as well. So let's see how I get on with these things. And yeah, if it helps you, then that's good for me. So here you can see that I've stuck down 2 card embossing folders. This is what they look like when they're not stuck down. I'm only using 1/2 of the card holder, and it's the half that has the pattern indented into it rather than raised. They are for creating texture on paper, so you would put the paper in the middle of the two and press it down with a machine. But I've completely surrounded them in hot glue and given it quite a high lip as well, so that I've got room to pour silicone in. I've also got this die cutting piece, which is a motorbike, and I've completely covered the back in sellotape. So I've put the bike on a tile and I'm going to go around the outside edge with hot glue. Now there is a tiny little lip of sellotape around the outside edge of this bike, so I know that the hot glue will stick to that, because hot glue does not like sticking to anything shiny like glass or tiles. But it will stick to this little bit of sellotape that is sticking out around the edge. And as I've got to go quite close to the edge but not over the metal, then that will do fine. So just one go round with a hot glue gun, just to give it a small amount of space for the silicone to be poured in. That's all it needed. Once that's all done, you can see there's not much room for silicone, but the glue is above the metal frame, and that's all it needed. It's going to be quite a thin silicone inlay. For this project, I'm using Let's Resin silicone. Now I've made my silicone and I'm going to add a small amount of red pigment in this, just to make it slightly pink so that you can see the silicone, because white on white you're not going to be able to see it. So I needed you to be able to see where I'm pouring. I needed to see it myself as well, really. Shh, don't tell anyone. Once I'm happy it's all mixed in, then it's time to pour. This Let's Resin silicone is extremely good at getting rid of bubbles. A lot of other silicones that I've tried in the past, if you've got bubbles in to start with, you've got bubbles in at the end. But not this one. You pour it out, it looks like it's full of bubbles, but when it's curing, all the bubbles release and it's amazing. I absolutely love this silicone. I've never been a silicone user en masse before, but now I've been using silicone regularly for a good few weeks. I appreciate how good this stuff is. I actually had trouble buying it recently and I had to get an alternative, and boy was I not happy. But I have some now, so I'm all happy. Now I filled up the 2 card embossing plates quite thick with silicone, but I only want to run it over the top of the bike. So I've just got this metal frame covered, and I didn't make up enough coloured silicone, so I just filled it up with some clear that I had to the side. So 6 hours later and I can take these out of the hot glue mould that I made. You can't use the silicone for resin for 24 hours, but you can demold it after 6. And I am absolutely in love with this motorbike. It needs the flashing cutting off and I need to go around the outside, but the detail is amazing. As for the paper and card embossing folders, I was less impressed. The detail on the silicone is so shallow. It's there, but it's so shallow. The card embossing folders for me didn't work. Although they picked up the pattern, for me personally they did not work at all. With the butterflies that I made, I decided to give them a second chance, and I cut round one of the butterflies to see if I could actually cut round the shape itself. As I wasn't happy with them to use as an inlay, I thought there was no harm in trying. This is a cuticle remover that you can buy in packs from Amazon, and I have them linked in my Amazon shop. When you're going around any silicone, it is best to pull it slightly tight if you can, so that you can run a pair of scissors or a blade of some kind easily around the area that you want to. If it's stretched, it cuts so much easier. And eventually I had a little butterfly with pattern and detail, but I wasn't really happy with it. The bike, however, I decided to use. I'm going to use some British Racing Green from Mr. Mica and completely cover this bike. I have it sitting on a tile so it won't move anywhere. It does grip nicely to tiles. And once I've completely covered it in green, then I'm going to take most of it off and just leave the green in the shallow parts. Although I'm going to briefly outline what colours I'm using and what I'm doing to this motorbike, this video really isn't a colouring video. It's more to do with how the inlay came out. So I'll link a video or two in the top right hand corner that you might want to watch if you want to learn how to colour with mica. But basically I'm using Let's Resin gold and silver to colour the motorbike in different areas, and then I'm going to give it a black border and some red highlights here and there. Now, to be honest with you, could have stopped there. I could have just stopped with the gold and the silver, and the green ran outside and in the little tiny areas. That would have done it, because I still ended up colouring it once I took the silicone out of the resin. You'll see that in a moment, but this red and black were really not necessary. I left them in so that you could see what I did, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense, but it really wasn't necessary, and I'll explain why in a minute. It looks a bit of a mess, but it doesn't come out like that, I can assure you. So once I'd finished with my colouring, I laid it gently into the mould. This is a hanging sign mould that I've used once before, and I do love it. Now I'm going to be using some UV resin, and a company called ISTOYO sent me a packet of UV resin lamps to try. I'm going to just show you quickly the unboxing of these items, because this video isn't about this. As I need to use a UV lamp, I want to try this out. I'm not going to do a proper review on it until I've tried it for quite a while. Then I can give a long-term, honest review down the line a little bit. But to start with, I love the way it's come out. It's light, it's easy to unpack, it's beautifully wrapped. 2 little lamps in one box, and the bigger one is just brilliant that it folds up so you can store it away. But that's just an unboxing impression. We won't really know until we've tried it out for a while. And it comes with a little silicone mat as well, which I really wasn't expecting. It runs on a USB, so I can plug it into my USB plug that's just underneath the bench, which is perfect for me. So going back to the motorbike, I'm going to use some UV resin. And this is Let's Resin UV resin. And I've got a little ball tool from my drawer, and I'm going to be using this ball tool to do the trend. So the trend that has spread across the world, thanks to TN Art, who put a video out on it recently, is to cure UV resin onto a mould and colour behind it so it looks like water. So what I thought I'd do is to have the bike in lots of rain. So by putting a drop of UV resin on a ball tool and just pulling it upwards as you push it onto the mould, it looks kind of like a raindrop. Now this is quite time consuming, as you may imagine. I do a few raindrops and I cure it. And I cover the entire rest of the mould in rain. And then I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be good to have puddles at the bottom? So I decided to go a little bit further and put quite a lot of splashing water underneath the bike, as it would splash when it rains. and not forgetting to cure the underside of the mould. This little lamp is becoming very handy. So once that's all cured, then it's time to colour the water droplets and all the surrounding area, and I'm using Let's Resin Blue for this. It's one of my favourite colours. It is gorgeous. So I go over the entire mould with the Let's Resin Blue. And now you can kind of see where everything is. Looks like a starry night, or snow, or something. I'm going to be using Let's Resin resin for the pour, my go-to resin. Don't forget your 10% discount at checkout using my link. And I'm using Vista Black pigment, but I'm sure there's other black pigments that are sold across the world. So as there are so many places on this pour that can trap bubbles, I'm going to spray it with 99% alcohol before I pour the resin. That should, in theory, help get rid of any trapped air because it's a wet surface and it will flow easier. So I fill the mould to the top, and this is where I make a little error. Well, it's quite a big error actually. I use a micro brush to go around the outside of everything to get rid of any trapped airs in 90-degree angles. Unfortunately, I was a little heavy-handed and took off some of the colouring when I brushed the brush across. Maybe a silicone tool would have been a better choice here, or just a lighter touch. But I was gutted when I demoulded it and found there was a line going right the way around the bike and around the outside edge. It happens, nobody's perfect, but the silicone inlay came out like a dream, and I loved the bike, although it did look quite dull. But the water effect and the puddle at the bottom I absolutely love. I'm going to have to do more with this. The water is just amazing. Thanks, TNR. Then I used my Cricut and I printed out some wording and put Back When It Rains on the side in holographic vinyl, which I absolutely adore. And I think that just says it all. And on the back, if you can turn it round, it says at home. I then went round the outside edge with my deburring tool, and I used a Decocolor premium pen to highlight the edge. Again, I wasn't happy with the bike, so this is where I spruced it up a little. I added a tiny amount of red colouring into some UV resin, and I layered the UV resin onto the bike areas. Now, because it was a die cut mould, it had definite lines where the resin wouldn't flow over. Because UV resin needs light to travel through it to cure, with any coloured resin you need to do very thin layers and several of them. I then did the same with the black outline, and then I filled in the entire bike with UV resin, which was clear, just to make it a completely flat surface and the same level as the rest of it. Well, this has been a mammoth video to put all these little elements into. But the point of the video was to see if these card embossing folders would work. And yes, they do, but I'm not keen. The die cut, however, I love. The detail on the silicone inlay that I used was gorgeous. And I absolutely love the trend water effect, and everything about this sign is just so cool. I love it. I hope you've enjoyed this one, even though it's been quite mammoth. It's definitely been fun. I loved making it. I hope you've got something out of it. I will be selling just a few of these motorbike inlays on my website, but when they're gone, they're gone. So go check out toonpish.com, place where all my discount codes are, and you never know what else you're going to find. Come back and see me next week, because you never know what I'm going to be up to. I never know what I'm going to be up to. Have a great week. Happy crafting, and bye for now.